So we use the data to not define who we are. We use it to say, let's objectively and unemotionally learn from what's happening within our practice and see how we can continue to get better.
This is Growth in Dentistry, a dental intelligence podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I'm Steve Jensen, a data dental nerd and your host. As always, I have to give a huge shout out to Dental Intelligence for sponsoring this podcast week after week after week. They have a special promotion. You've heard me give the same one over and over again, and we have a new one for Independence Day, and it is amazing. So here's the deal. You can get 2 free months of Swell just for doing a demo, or a $100 Amazon gift card. Now, Swell, if you haven't ever heard of it, is the absolute best solution out there to maximize your Google reviews. It will send out the reminders to the patients. And I'm telling you, even just recently, we had a customer sign up and they were struggling to get reviews just by asking for patients to do it. And when they sent this bad boy out, they were able to get over 30 reviews within just a couple of days. So if you're thinking, hey man, I've got to get some fresh reviews on my Google page, I've got to get my name out there, then you can get 2 free months of Swell just for doing a demo with Dental Intelligence, or a $100 Amazon gift card for our July Independence Day promotion. Now, without any further ado, let me introduce Dr. Markowitz. So Dr. Markowitz graduated from Tufts University 2011. I promise I wouldn't forget that. Is that right? 2011?
Yep. Right on the spot, man. Good job.
Okay, sweet. So he's
I know it's been a day for you today, Steve.
Yeah, it has been.
I appreciate any accurate information and even some that may not be as accurate. So you're doing great.
Well, then in that case, he is best known as the best looking dentist in the greater Boston area. So that is how he's best known. So he's since graduating school, his dad's a dentist, was a dentist, and has created a family business. And it's always been about family and community for him. What's really impressed me is they've grown, and this has been, if I understand right, more out of necessity. Like they started to add, okay, we don't have enough space in the original one, so added another location, and now we're up to 6 locations in the Boston area. And since the time, we've actually done another episode with Dr. Markowitz. It was a couple years ago. And in that time, and since the time he started this thing, there have been lots of ups and downs in this roller coaster. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about some of those like lessons learned, like if you could kind of package some of that, what are some of the lessons learned? And we're also going to talk about a management strategy that has to do with numbers and data. So is there anything you want to add in that you want folks to know about you, Dr. Markowitz?
Most of what Steve shared is not true. I'm just the averagest looking dentist in the greater Boston area. No, I'm happy to be on here again. Like I shared, I've been a Dental Intel client since 2015 and continue to utilize all of their advancements and help with my patients and my practices and continue to get better. So I'm excited to be able to share some of my experiences and what I've learned along the way, and happy to help out Dental Intel and the Dental Intel team any way I can.
Sweet. So let's start. I always like to do this at the very beginning. I like to kind of size up. Now, generally speaking, a lot of these are with single practices, so I'll ask them, how many doctors are in your one location? How many ops do you have? How many full-time team members? Just so that people, as we talk about like success and management, it gives them context as a listener to know like, okay, like, yeah, I relate on that, or I have a little smaller team or a little bigger team. So give us like, if you can, like kind of a quick size up of the 6 locations, if that's okay. I know it's 23 docs. That's a lot in and of itself, but talk through the team.
Yeah, we are a multi-specialty group practice. So each of our offices have multiple doctors, multiple specialties. We're 150 people strong to support our docs and with our doctors. And every day can bring some new excitement, and we do our best to make sure that we're doing best by our patients, and we're creating an environment where our team feels supported and our patients feel supported. So that's what we try and aim for every day.
Yeah, that's great. So these are in terms of like context across the industry, these are bigger practices, right? Like this.
Yeah, we have larger practices. The intention is to be the one-stop shop. So we intentionally have multiple doctors with multiple specialties in each office, and we have found that patients are more prone to accept treatment when they don't have to do the specialty dance and drive this way and drive that way. And that was something that I learned many years ago, where I would have a patient, I'd give them 2 pieces of paper and say, go to the oral surgeon, go to the endodontist, and then they'd come back in 3 months, or they'd come back in pain and they say, oh, I never got to that. And I was like, well, there's got to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in our Chelmsford office, as soon as we brought in the periodontist into that office, we saw case acceptance of surgery implants skyrocket. So that was something that it wasn't like we had this master plan of becoming a multi-specialty group practice. It just, this worked, and therefore we should do more of it.
Yeah, that's great. Now, tell me, are you guys all general dentists, or do you have some specialists doing multiple days a week? Tell me a little bit about the provider breakdown.
Yeah, we have specialists doing multiple days a week that travel throughout the locations, and trying to create this little network where if they're in one location and that they may be full, or they may be there on Mondays, but they're going to be in this other office on Wednesdays, that we can utilize our locations to our patients' benefit, so that they can get the care that they want from the providers they're used to seeing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting you say that. I'll just make this comment for listeners. If you didn't listen to it, there's an episode probably like 5 or 6 episodes ago. I interviewed a consultant where like that's all he consults practices on, is how you can implement using a specialist in your practice. Now, obviously you have to have op space and stuff like that. But he said there has just been this like increasing demand for that in dentistry, both from the specialty side, like they're getting to a point where they're trying to figure out like, how do I make sense of having like a full lease and a full team and keep myself busy versus just going to the place where the patients actually are. So it's cool that you've created that network within your 6 locations.
We also found that it allows our general dentists to do higher quality or higher end dentistry, because they have the comfort of talking to the specialist that's in the op next door about an extraction or a bone graft or a molar root canal, where if the specialist is down the street, that they only know each other because of a piece of paper or like a Christmas card they get. They're not willing to, most dentists aren't willing to take the risks or feel like they have the confidence that is provided when that specialist is literally in the same building as you. So we've seen, not only do our specialists benefit from having full schedules of the type of dentistry they want, but also our general doctors get to push themselves and grow in ways to add to their service mix because of having specialists in-house.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Okay, now I think that gives us a pretty good idea of like the business itself. We got 6 locations. They're bigger locations, lots of providers, lots of team members. They're, well-oiled machines, which means when we're doing that kind of volume, like operationally, we have to be dialed in. It requires a lot of management to have 150 team members, packed into 6 locations is a lot. I'm just kind of imagining that. So Adam, let's start with your question. I think that'd be interesting. And then we'll kind of work our way into some of like these broader lessons, like lessons learned as you have grown from, a single location up. So why don't you go ahead and frame that question?
Sure. Yeah. The question I have, first of all, I don't think we quite did justice of how high performing these practices are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was joking about his.
No.
Yeah, you're right.
They're normal dental practices.
So we measure metrics across 10,000 practices, and Dr. Markowitz has 6 practices that are all very, very well into the top 10% of all the practices that we measure, which means a couple things. First of all, it means you're doing a phenomenal job at creating systems that work. And within those systems are people. And last time we talked, and this is why I wanted to bring it up, we glanced over a topic that I felt like you did a really, really well on, that a lot of people struggle with. You use data in a way that helps inform behavioral change in your practices to drive the behaviors that you're wanting to, but you balance it in a way. Sometimes when people try to do that, you scare people away. People get the attitude of, oh, you only care about money, or you only care about this number. But you've done it in a way that balances that really well and created, like I said, a system of with several systems that work really, really well across multiple practices. So I wanted to get into that a little bit deeper. How do you ingrain that in your your employees to be open to feedback from data, but still not think that that's the only thing that you care about?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's a lot that we do with it, and one is that data is a lot of all of our conversations. So it's part of everyday conversation with between me and the managers and the doctors. Everything has to have some type of information to make decisions, or we're just going to go, based on whatever, however we feel that day when we wake up. But I think to take a step back, um, our locations are pretty busy, are pretty large. So we have a lot of patients that are walking through the door. And one thing I share with my team almost every day is, even if we see 100 patients a day, and some days we see more in each of our offices, if we have 99% awesome, that means every single day we're going to have something that goes wrong or something that isn't perfect. And I think part of understanding how to make data work for us is also know that even if we're an A plus, and 99 out of 100 in my book is an A plus, every day we're going to be like, crap, that I could have done that better. And we're right. We're 100% right. We could have, but we need to take that and say, this is not going to define us. Like these things that aren't getting the results that we want exactly aren't going to define us. Those are the learning opportunities. So we use the data to not define who we are. We use it to say, let's objectively and unemotionally learn from what's happening within our practice and see how we can continue to get better. And it's my job, I feel as though my job in the organization is to make sure that we're continuing to get better, and data allows us to do that.
Yeah, I love that. Now I'm gonna ask a question. This is gonna ask you to like rewind in your brain 10 years, because it's been about 10 years you've been working with Lintel. So I'm like a little interested to know, when you first started looking at data, was it originally just like a you thing, like
it was
you're out of school for 4 or 5 years? Was it just you were stoked on it and then you like slowly moved it into your team? Like,
I needed something to justify how I was feeling. So I was just looking for numbers to make it look, I was just looking for what I already knew. I didn't know how incredible it could be utilized to help me make decisions. I kind of, and meaning forward thinking decisions. If 10 years ago, Steve would say, let's go find the data that justifies how he's thinking.
Yeah.
And now I think,
which is super common. Yeah.
I'm sure I still do it. But now I think it's at the point of, let's see what the trends are showing me.
Yeah.
And let's try and look at this objectively to be able to learn and improve and take better care of the team, the practice, the patients. And if we do that, everybody wins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So can I ask one more?
Yeah.
I kind of want to know, like, if you can't remember, that's totally fine, because it may have been kind of over time and as you added locations, but can you like pinpoint at all a moment when it started transition from like Dr. Markowitz being really interested in data, and there's probably some level of like, as a leader, making sure that you have your head wrapped around, okay, like, what is this stuff? What does it mean? What does it mean about these individuals? And then maybe moving into like the team and like exposing them to that. Like, do you have any recollection of that process of going from you being interested to like starting to give that over to your team at all? Like, when did that happen? Was that one location, 2 locations? Was it less about locations and more about your own comfort level?
I don't know if it was an exact location. I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday. I'm trying to make me remember 7 years ago.
I know, I said it's tough. I'm asking you to rewind a lot of years.
But I think that as I began to manage practices without being present there every day,
yeah,
there had to be a necessity on something to measure our growth.
Yeah.
And then we started to have meetings. And those meetings needed some discussion of like, are we doing what we say we want to do? I love the book 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's really defined who we are as an organization. That's Pat Lencioni's book. I hope you guys have read it. If not,
Yep.
I'm sending you a copy. But on the top of the pyramid in his model, it's results. And the clearer I became on the results that we're all working towards, the easier it was to use data as part of the discussion. So we spent the majority of my dental career just having these awesome relationships with our team members and with our patients, and the outcome was whatever happened. And then as we started to use data in a smarter way, it became, let's actually define those results that we want. What does it mean to win this game of taking care of patients, and all work together to get that. And we can actually measure where we're going, how we're doing along the way. And that's the data point, whether it be production, new patients, phone answer rate, whatever it is that we want to know, hygiene reappointment percentage. I know we talked a little bit about that last time. We can measure exactly how we're doing along the way and know that we're working towards the result that we agreed upon as a group is super important, that we care deeply about.
I want to ask a question on that. How have you seen that, the clearly defined objective that you're trying to accomplish, and then measuring along the way, how have you seen that affect team morale? I'm sure you're probably easy to get along with already, so people probably weren't like sad to be working with you early on, but as you've gotten clearer on that, and you see your team succeeding on that and celebrating along the way, have you noticed an impact on team morale?
Everybody wants to win, I think, right? I mean, it's easy to be on a winning team, and it's fun to be on a winning team, to see progress. So if we can define what that looks like, both through feelings and quantitatively, that I think that checks all the boxes. And it's my job and our job as an organization to continue to support our team and make sure they know that we care for them along the way to get to the result that we want.
I love that. I asked that question kind of leading, right? I was leading towards something, but
well, where are you going, Adam?
you went there. That I led you to the right place. But something that I see, like in organizations, as I join organizations sometimes, and they don't have the right data in place or the right systems in place. As a leader, sometimes you can take the thought of, people are going to be happier if I don't make them change. Like if I just don't bug them, if I don't break their systems. And that's not true. They might not complain to you if you don't break their systems, but if you help someone make changes and see growth, that's when people become the most loyal to you, because they're making progress in their lives, in their efforts, and they're seeing the impact that they're making to that measurable outcome. So I think sometimes when you get in that leadership position, the easier thing to do sometimes is, well, just don't rock the boat, right? You hear that a lot, but it's not really going to get you the best outcome, both for your business, but also for the people on your team. So that's why I wanted to dive into this. I remembered we didn't approach the topic specifically, but you had mentioned that you use data with your doctors when they tell you what they're trying to accomplish, to show them, well, here's someone else that's trying to accomplish that. Here's what they're doing with their numbers. Here's what you're doing with your numbers. How do we make that ground up, or how do we help you get to what you're trying to accomplish, right? So
I think the data can just show us what's possible.
Yeah.
And if we create an environment where we know that there's always someone who's going to be able to do it better, and we can learn from them, then we all get better from that. So creating a culture that is humble enough to say, we may be doing a lot of things right, but we're nowhere near where we want to go, and let's look for someone or some organization that's doing it better, and try to find out how they're doing it and what their numbers look like, and then see how we can incorporate that into what we're doing on a daily basis. That's going to make us all better. And I think that it's more that mindset of abundance that will allow us to see it through that light that, okay, this doctor or this group or this office is doing this, and I'd love to understand how we can make it make our organization do something like that, or me as a doctor be able to learn something like that.
I like that.
That's awesome.
Now, can we just like push on this topic and take it one level deeper? So let's get to like some like maybe tactical application stuff. So I'm listening and I'm like, okay, yeah, like I'm bought in. Like I understand this idea. Like I can actually help with morale, which by the way, I'll just say like, even we're learning, Adam and I, as senior leaders here at Dental Intelligence, like as you can create really good systems of measurement within the company, team members know their expectations. And as you hit them, like predictability, humans crave predictability. So if they can like know whether a meeting is going to be positive or not, like that is such a good emotional experience. It's like, okay, like I know I sucked. And so I know what's about to happen in this conversation, where it's that unknown that freaks us out and creates a lot of emotion. And so in the business, right, like if we can lessen a lot of that unknown for our team members and make it known, objectively as possible with some of that measurement, man, it just helps. So talk us through kind of on that note, then getting down to some like tactical stuff. When do these numbers conversations come up? Doctors, is there, business managers? Do assistants have numbers? Hygienists?
So if I could draw it up, every single person in every business position ever would have some kind of way to measure whether they're doing a good job or not.
Yeah.
Like, so whether it be the person who is, and I think we talked about this last time, the person who's confirming appointments, that job can really suck if you're looking at a list of 120 people. You're like, I got to make 120 phone calls, and maybe 6 of them show up. Like that can make me feel really garbagey. But if we can create some way for that employee or that team member to look at, like, I made 120 phone calls, and 2 days from now, 99% of people are going to show up to those appointments. Well, that reframes that job. I'm not just someone who makes 120 phone calls. I'm someone who's going to remind these patients about their appointment. They're going to have a better chance of showing up. And now I feel like I'm actually contributing, and what I do is relevant to the success of this business. That's what everybody really wants, is they want to know, I'm going to show up. I'm going to know if I'm doing a good job. I'm going to be able to feel good about what I'm doing, and what I'm doing actually matters. And if we can cover those things, everything should have a data point. Everything. If we want to get into the details, we provide scorecards weekly for each of our offices, monthly for our doctors, and we benchmark them to where the results are that we agreed upon in the beginning of the year or the beginning of the quarter that we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, and I actually want to hear. I'm interested to know, like, do you have a standard scorecard for providers and for practices? And you might not like list all of them, but what are some of like the highlights on there? Because
so
people, looking at data, they're like, okay, yeah, like production, collections, new patients, and
you
anything
nailed it.
else.
You got it. So we have, like, on our weekly scorecard for the offices, it's production, but there are things underneath it, like, are we treatment planning enough? What's our treatment plan? How much did we treatment plan last week? What was our acceptance last week? What's treatment planned? What's scheduled next week? What's scheduled 2 weeks out? Then we have the next bucket is collections. What's our AR days? Mm-hmm. How much left uncollected last week that we should have collected? What was our collection percentage? How many membership plans did we add that week? Then it's new patients. New patients when is the new patient number is easy to know, but also what goes into that? When's our new patient next opening? What does local med say our next opening is? Visits. How many visits did we have? How many hygiene openings were there at the end of the week? How many doctor openings were there at the end of the week? So we have these big buckets, which it's an easy scorecard. It turns red if you hit it. It turns green if you did it. But then there are things underneath it that if we're not hitting, if we're not hitting where we said we want to go, then we dive in deeper and say, okay, the numbers production, but why? Underneath the data points underneath it on our scorecard are really the why. Why do we not hit it? So And then our doctors are getting their scorecards monthly, and I'm happy to go through that too.
Yeah, I actually am interested. I'll just point out a couple of things. Like one of the things that he rattled off a ton of numbers, but I want to call some of them out. Like the common numbers that people look at are all lagging. Like they just tell us what happened in the past, but then some of those Y numbers can help us identify, okay, what can we expect in the future? For example, if we look at how much treatment total did we diagnose last week, that's going to dramatically impact our clinical schedule this week and the next. Like that's when a lot of the stuff gets scheduled. We diagnosed it last week and it gets scheduled within a couple of weeks to try to knock out some of the stuff, at least the most painful stuff for the patient, right? So some of those trends you'll start learning for your practice, where it's like, man, if I see a big drop off in my diagnostic habits in a week, then that could impact the following weeks with our production levels. So that's why some of those numbers are more leading, right? Hygiene reappointment is when you throw out there, and that's telling us like, okay, like how many patients we have scheduled out in the future, like 6 months from now, are we going to have a healthy hygiene schedule or an empty hygiene schedule? And so all of those things are so important that are lagging. Like, okay, are we actually putting money in the bank account? But it's also important to look at like, okay, what are we doing today that's creating success ongoing for the future?
Steve, one thing I didn't mention with the numbers for new patients. I'll talk to doctors and they'll say like my new patient numbers aren't really what I want them to be, and then we'll look at their call answer rate, and it's like in the 60s. So one thing that I didn't mention was call answer rate is huge. If we're going to say we're going to provide an amazing experience for our patients, and we better start by answering the phone when they need us most. There's a reason why they're calling us, and there's a reason something prompted them to, if it's a new patient or not even a patient yet, a lead, something prompted them to call us. We better answer the phone when that person calls, or they're going to just go down to the next person on Google. So there's a lot of the lagging indicators, like you call them, or our buckets that we have for our scorecards. There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot that we can actually change in our behavior that will create the result that we actually want.
Yeah, that's great. Any other thing you want to dive in on with team members, analytics?
No, I think just kind of boiling down all of what you said. You know, it starts with a culture of the team understanding what the company's goals are, right? And in order for this to work, the entire team has to have trust in your ethics as the leader, right? If at any point they question that, they're going to start questioning all of the things that you're asking them to do. So start there. Make sure everyone is on board with what you're doing, your treatment philosophies, your philosophies as a business, and get them behind that number. And from there, where do we want to go? What are the scorecard? What does the scorecard and the metrics look like that are going to get us there? Then each scorecard is having what happened in the recent past and what did we do in the recent past that's going to impact our both immediate and sometimes distant futures, so that we are covering all the bases to, going back up, accomplish this goal that we have, this ethical goal that we have as a business. And that is, you've balanced that really well across 6 locations. So it says a lot about you as a leader and about your leadership team, because there's a lot of people that have a hard time getting that level of buy-in at 1 location, at 2 locations. So really, really exciting. But I'd encourage anyone listening that's having a hard time with that to analyze each of those steps and be honest with yourself. Where is the breakdown happening? Will people not let me bring numbers into the equation because they're scared, because they're not doing a good job, because they don't trust what I'm doing as a leader? All of those things have to be present for data to be meaningful and to lead us in the right direction. So I love the response there. And again, I want to emphasize 10,000 practices in most of the metrics that we looked at. You're top 1%, almost every single one top 10%. So it's working really well.
That's cool. I do want to add something to that. Don't lead with data just to have data. Yeah. I think that that's super important, even though it's so obvious. Without trust and a true relationship with your team, the data is useless, because we want to use the data to actually change and impact the behaviors that we're trying to create in our practices. And what we really need is a trusting, caring, honest relationship, and then using data to support that, so that we as a group can go where we want to go. So if you're hesitant to introduce data to your team, I think that the issue may be deeper than using or not using data. My guess is that you're hesitant with your relationship with your team. And I would start there and spend months on building trust and creating true relationships. And then once you have that, then we can start to talk about data. When I walk into a practice, if the first thing I said was, our production isn't good enough, guys. We want to be at 80,000 and we're at 73. It would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, no, go away. That doesn't jive with what I'm trying to do. So we don't start with data. We start with, this is who we are. This is how we want to care about it. This is how we want to care for our patients. This is how we want to care for one another. And then once we have that level of trust, and there may be different ways for us to measure that, but once we feel comfortable that we have a true relationship, and the team understands and trusts us and what our goals are and who we really are, then we can introduce data and goals and metrics to support what they already know about us.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, let's shift from, I mean, it's kind of one and the same. We're going to move into this. You mentioned that one of the reasons why you started using data was you started to remove yourself from the day-to-day business and needed a way to like see what was going on, have a common language. So kind of this like forced application. Now, I'll say this to listeners, and I would assume you'd echo the same. Don't wait until you have like a forced reason to start looking and using data in the business. Like, that's something worth doing now. Okay. Now, I would love to shift. Or you want to say something on that?
No, unrelated. My speaker just went out, so
I noticed. I saw you switch over to headphones. And
I don't know what just happened there, so I hope that.
I was just riffing while I saw you tinkering for a second. Where I was like, okay, we can get
That's gonna play really well on. I can't wait to listen to this part on iTunes.
So let's shift into this. So since 2011, joining the family practice, now we're 2024. And you guys have seen really great growth. You got 6 like high performing big practices. Yep. And there, I know at least has been one that's like, has been a thorn in the side that's not one of those 6. Yep. And I would love to hear you share some of your lessons learned. Like, you're talking to a younger doc who's wanting to, start doing some of this, or maybe you're talking to, someone at the same place as you, has been out of school for a chunk of years. Maybe you're even talking to someone older that's like, hey, I want to restart my career and do something different. Like, what advice do you have for those that are looking to grow their practice? And maybe they got 1 location, they want to go to 3, or maybe they want to add a practice. What lessons have you learned as you've grown?
That's awesome. And I'm happy to share, because this past year, we've learned a ton, and it does piggyback on the data stuff. So for me, at this point last year, we were actually at 7 practices. Mm-hmm. And we had a practice that was underperforming and utilizing a lot of resources and putting a lot of stress on me and my team. And we intentionally decided to offload that practice. What happened for me is that I actually hit my leadership wall. I found that I wasn't being as clear as I thought I was in my expectations, and I wasn't using the data to share with the team what the expectations are, as much as I thought I was. And the team, it was a great culture, and meaning they liked each other and they cared about one another, but they weren't performing in a way that was going to be healthy for the business and allow us to continue our purpose in that location. And that, I think my biggest takeaway is anytime that I think I'm being clear, I need to be clearer. And that I think was super humbling to understand and to hit that wall. And I think this I needed, I feel that I needed a challenge that I did not overcome, and I'm using those words intentionally instead of failure. A challenge I did not overcome to rethink how I communicate expectations of a practice. And
I just say I love what you just said too, by the way. I just want to throw this out there because I preach it to, I've got two boys, 7 and 5
yeah,
years old, and I preach it to them nonstop. Like whenever I hear them say, Dad, I can't do this, I stop them and I say no. And then they immediately, because they're trained now, they say, I haven't figured this out yet.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
I'm such a big believer in that. So I love that you said that. I haven't failed. It was
yeah,
I haven't figured out how to I don't remember the exact words, maybe I haven't figured out how to overcome that one yet.
yeah. We use yet as a team all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my biggest takeaway. And um it it was really hard to um to feel as though that there was something within the dental business that I wasn't able to overcome. But I think the next step and of who we're going to become would not have been as uh this gonna sound corny. It's not going to be as beautiful as it is as it's going to be without that thorn that uh of that challenge in that practice.
Now I'm interested, just for our listeners, was there anything like different? Like they're probably like, well, what was it? Like, what was this practice? Were they like clinically different than you? So like they were just doing simpler
Yeah.
dentistry. They didn't have, was it comprehensive? Was it, they didn't have as many ops? Was like what were some of the barriers that got in the way? Because as they're listening, they're like, yeah, Dr. Markowitz, like, yeah, I don't want to grow 6 practices and then think I'm immortal and then buy a 7th and be like, ah, crap, like I can't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So was there something different about this practice that was new for you as well? Or, you know, what?
Yeah, I think from the acquisition, it wasn't the traditional doctor retiring um and now ready to hand it off to the next person. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a different type of acquisition for us. And throughout that, throughout our the year of us having the practice, it was also are are we measuring the right things?
Mm-hmm.
And just because someone is a um, a good person who cares doesn't necessarily mean they're in the right seat for what that job requires.
Yeah.
And I think another lesson that was learned is right seat, right person, right seat is everything for the success of any position. And you can have someone who's great, a great person, a good values fit, and then you put them into a seat that their skill set doesn't align with. And because you think so much of them or don't want to let them down or don't let the team let the team down, you let it go longer than it probably should have, and then everyone loses. And that's another lesson that I learned in this process.
Yeah. And those lessons are hard lessons. One, deciding to like let the practice go. I'm sure that was hard. Two, those people decisions are hard because they're people, right? So moving someone, roles can be so emotional. You know, people don't want to feel like they failed at something. Now, have you
And I didn't want to
experience
feel
where
and I
you've
didn't want to
moved
feel like I
someone?
failed at something.
Say what?
And I didn't want to feel like I failed at
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Have you had an experience? Let's give like maybe a practical example within
Yeah.
the business over these years. Have you had an experience where you've moved someone successfully? It's like, yeah, like, and you don't have to give like names or anything, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
conceptually, you know, how do you go from recognizing, okay, like maybe this isn't the right spot, but we want to use them in a different way in the business and making that transition? Have you done that successfully? And, you know, what does that look like?
Yeah. I always I think one of the coolest parts about having a growing group like we do is that it provides opportunity in a dental practice far beyond what a single location can create. So we always look to, as we're growing, to find opportunities in our team for them to continue to grow in their career. And that means that they're going to be outside their comfort zone because like I say this, I say this to my team all the time. I don't actually know what I'm doing. And every day we wake up and we're a little bit bigger than we were yesterday. So this is the biggest organization I've ever run. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to open my eyes and hopefully, and I'm going to say, this is the biggest organization I've ever run. And hopefully if we're doing a good job every single day, we wake up and we still are doing that. And that means that we're going to be uncomfortable because we're going to be doing things that we don't have a ton of experience with. So as we put people into these new roles, I think that's where that clarity and the expectations from me hold so much more weight. So for me and my leadership team, when we put people in new roles, we can't just put them in the role, let them fly, and then come back and be like, you suck, so you messed this up. It has to be, we're going to put you in this role. I'm putting you in this role because I think that you're the best person for it. You know us, you know our culture, you know how we work better than anyone in the world. And it's my job to make sure that you have such clear expectations, and I'm here to walk with you. And we're going to meet weekly or we're going to meet monthly, and there's going to be no stone unturned in your initial journey. And eventually you're going to be able to see further in this role than I can right now. But we're gonna win together and we're gonna fail together in this role until we both have confidence in one another that you're ready to you can do this without me.
Yeah, I love that. And that probably even ties back to like the initial big chunk of this conversation around clarity around performance. You're like, yeah, if I could have I want to have a number for everybody, like they all connect back so that you can be super clear with performance, that I'm sure all.
It does become harder as you get higher up in an organization and your responsibilities become vaguer.
Yep.
So like if you're just responsible for the P&L, which is something I love to hear when I hear leaders of organizations, not just dentistry, but they're like, yeah, I'm responsible for the P&L. And I'm like, that's literally everything. So
yeah, that's the whole thing.
That doesn't make any. So what is your day? What do you wake up and you do what?
Yeah.
So I think as you get higher up in an organization and your responsibility becomes vaguer, that's when you need even more and greater clarity in what is it that I'm actually going to be doing. The result is that our P&L looks in the black and not in the red.
Yep.
But I need to be doing certain things and know what I'm doing and have the support of my manager or my leader to allow me to get to the result that you're expecting of me.
Yeah, that's really good.
One thing that I'll say is your leadership skills show through in different ways. And one of them that I've noticed over the past 2 times that we've met is your ability to glance over something that's a really complex concept as if it's common knowledge. You mentioned when you're training someone in a new role, you're walking with them, and then you said, and at some point you're going to see further in this role than I will. And as a leader of an organization, you have to adopt that mindset. If people only execute the things that you know as a leader, then you're going to be very, very limited. The ability to grow a larger organization is enabling people who more and more frequently see further in different areas than you can. And your leadership and willing to say, let's learn this, and then I'm going to give you the tools to go and find out way more than I know about this. That's what's getting a lot of this growth. And you kind of glanced over that, but
that's a good call out.
That's been out of mistakes, and I'm a dentist. I'm a trained dentist. So when anything outside of that realm, I know that most people in finance or accounting or marketing or whatever their specialty is are going to have way more knowledge about that than me. And in the first half of my career, I would say I was afraid. How can I remember telling my wife, like, how can I manage this person? They know I can't bring a accountant into our group. They know way more than me about accounting. Or I can't bring a marketing lead into this organization. They know way more about marketing than I. And that once I just dove in out of necessity, I was like, oh my goodness, we need someone in finance to take this, because this is outside of my. It's outgrown me. And then I saw what that led to. That opened my eyes to, like, okay, we can do this in other avenues or other verticals within our group, and let's see what happens. And then it just the successes gave me confidence that we could continue to do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. Now I could sit here and talk forever.
Yeah, sorry.
we've got one final question. We're coming up on time here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it. We ask everyone that joins the question, because it's the Growth in Dentistry podcast. We ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? Now, it's been a couple of years, and you're probably not going to even remember your last answer. So I'm really interested in, today, Dr. Markowitz, when you think about growth in dentistry, what does that mean to you?
The only question that I wasn't prepared to answer was the one that you ask every single person. So now I got to think about it.
It's better when it's just extemporaneous.
Yeah, I think growth in so first, dentistry is, if it's not the best profession in the world, it's got to be in the top 3. There's nothing like our ability as dentists and dental professionals to physically touch people, to emotionally touch people, and actually care for people in a special way. I've shared this with you last time. My dad hasn't been in his practice since 2006. And there are still people every single time I'm in that practice that ask how he's doing, make sure you say hi. And that's the level of impact that we can have on people as dentists. Like, that is wild to me. But growth in dentistry is, at this point, I think it's service to more people. And whether that be team members or patients or communities or practices, if we're continuing to serve people in a way that provides value, what better growth than that?
I love that answer. I tell people, this reminded me, I tell people all the time, like, dentistry is so cool because you have thousands of local community members. And it's a rare business that are coming in and having a very personal interaction with you. Like, yes, the grocery store's got thousands of people going through their business too, but it's different, right? The dental practice is a much more intimate experience, and it's a chance for you to, like, take you and your team's energy and share it with them, and then send them back out into the community every 6 months or however often they're coming. Like, and that's such a cool chance that you have to impact not just the oral health of these people, because you're absolutely doing that, and making them feel more confident and smiling, because you're absolutely doing that, but also just their emotion walking out, right? You have a chance to really share who you guys are. And so I don't think we should lose that as well. And that's clear from you, right? It's big. It's about the community, about service. And I love that answer. Well, thank you, Dr. Markowitz, for joining. Thank you, Adam, for joining today as a co-host. This has been a Growth in Dentistry podcast, where we ask the question, what does growth in dentistry mean to you? I am Steve Jensen, your host. Thank you for listening. We'll talk soon.